unannounced the stuff that we're coming out with.
It's a big statement.
Don't tell anyone. We also need to sell some products.
Whether it's Asetek or Moser or these new Far Eastern brands coming out, I can tell you from a consumer perspective, that would be amazing.
What you ask for is impossible.
Okay, this is super exciting here with Andre Eriksson from Asetek Sim Sports, but we're going to talk about sim racing wheels and how it all comes together. And I see, oh my God, I almost took a transistor off. PCB and maybe like a mold, but you're the expert. And I just want to do a very, very, very brief introduction. There's a bit of the story that I don't understand that I'd like you to tell me, which is how you actually got into sim racing. How did that come around? You have some spare cash and thought you'd do it, or you had a long-standing passion?
I think I was 13, 14 years old when I started to do motocross here in Denmark. And I do not come from a wealthy family, so I actually had 2 or 3 jobs simultaneously, a newspaper boy, wiping factory floors and stuff, just to afford that. Then I think I was 17 years old, where I borrowed one of my friend's motocross cycles.
Did you know about it?
Yeah, he was, don't tell anyone, we were at the age where we had started partying, and he was actually hungover, so he couldn't race. So I borrowed his bike. And on his bike that was brand new, I was actually winning races. And after that I quit because I was like, okay, racing is just about money. And there's no way I'm ever going to be able to afford that. You know, my bike was 3 years old and pretty much everyone else had completely new gear. So I was like, screw racing, that's too expensive. And then I just followed racing and Formula One and pretty much everything about cars and stuff as an interest, but not really done it myself. Then in 2007, I moved to the US, and then a board member and a good friend there introduced me to karting up at Sonoma Raceway. And before I had left, I had been down in the, I think it's called Wine Country Motorsports, and I bought a helmet and a suit, and I bought a kart, I bought everything. And then I started to do super competitive kart racing. I actually bought 2 go-karts with full data equipment.
4-stroke, 2-stroke?
2-stroke.
Yeah.
And then I hired a former professional or a former factory go-kart driver and said, you are going to teach me how to drive this thing properly. And then I kept going and kept going and kept going until I actually won the North California Championship. I went to the US Nationals in go-karts also. And then after that, I started to race Formula cars. And then eventually, when my kids turned, I think 7 and 8, they started to race go-karts as well. And my son that I think you met today, Valdemar, you know, he's been through the ranks. And you know, at some point, I actually ran my own Formula 4 team with 2 cars. We've run our own GT3 team. He's been racing in GT3 and LMP cars and Formula cars. He's raced MRF Challenge out in Asia in Formula 3 cars. So we've been super involved, our entire family, in racing for many, many years by now.
I mean, it's crazy to see the passion there because, you know, I'm sure we're gonna talk about Asetek. I'm sure we're gonna mention other brands, but you know, to see you as someone who obviously has a passion for racing, people don't see that when they see the brand.
No.
Whether it's Asetek or Moser or these new Far Eastern brands coming out, you just don't know who's behind it. Is that a story you really want to tell? I should say, when you walk in the building here, Asetek HQ,
you will be blind not to see
cars from the ceiling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a story we are telling, and also, for example, when we go to trade shows and stuff, we bring the car, and and the car that you saw and not the least heard today. You know, I think a lot of our competitors, they are sponsoring a driver or 2 or even a race series. But they are not real racers themselves, and I think that's what sets us apart a little bit here, is that the car you've seen down there with Asetek staff actually won the Danish championship. I think we've done it twice. Before the LMP3 car, it was an Audi R8 race car. So we come from that side for sure, and that's something we also brag about.
By way of context, I'm not paid to be here, but Asetek have flown me out to see what they do here in Denmark. You created a very successful, it's fair to say, maybe like a PC cooling business. You invented the vapor chill cooler back in the day, which came out of gaming, came out of racing, back when gaming was more CPU bound, and you chilled your CPU right down and you were setting world records. And then you made a all-in-one liquid cooler that so many of us watching will have put in our PC, but we'll see an Asus branded thing. It will be Alienware, but you make it, you have the patent on it. and you built that business out. Let's get into that a little bit, and I want to get onto the Invicta pedal that put Asetek on the map,
Yeah.
and talk about that. But let's just talk about some of the stuff you very kindly put in a box here for us to see, which is I'm really excited to see this, because we look at a product from the outside and we don't really know how it comes together. And a lot of products these days look really good from the front and they look really good in a YouTube video, and they all have carbon fiber front or forged fiber, but you can't see on the inside. Just from your racing driver perspective, just let us know a little bit about these grips. What's important to you in a grip? Like, I can see the chamfering, but I'm guessing also the kind of squeeziness, maybe the grip.
So, for example, these grips are what we call LMP grips. LMP stands for Le Mans prototype. And per definition, Le Mans is a very long race. So ergonomics is the most important thing here, that you can actually hold the wheel for many hours without cramps or without getting tired. And that's what these are designed for. It is very difficult with one shoe fits all. And therefore we also have different grips and different thicknesses and sizes. But in a real car, in a real race car, contrary to many's belief, in a race car, you can adjust the pedals. And if you're really lucky, you can adjust the seat a little bit. They can be molded to you. But if we were to race together, I'm probably a little bit fatter than you. So I would be in the seat first. So we need to have room for the fat guy. And then up is you. And when we do a driver swap, it has to go really fast. So if you're lucky, you can get some cushion, and that's it. And then you race. There's no time to do what we do in sim racing, where we optimize everything.
Yeah.
So that's what we've tried to achieve the best possible way here.
It's amazing to hear that detail that goes into sim racing. Let's have a look at the front of the Invicta, and then we'll get onto the Invicta pedals. This wheel, when it's fully assembled, is really a marvel to look at.
Yes.
Something I want to talk about is the screen, which is flush, which I know is really nice for cleaning. A lot of screens we see are not flush, and they look like a standard part.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind this screen, and was it difficult to get it to look like this?
Yes, there's a lot of difficulties in this Invicta wheel. It's actually pretty advanced, and we can go back to the back part, but the screen itself, most screens on the market today are standard USB devices. You plug it in, you have a screen, and you can stream a YouTube movie if you want to do that, or you can use, for example, SimHub, which is I think free to use software for everyone. Great software, it can do a lot of things. But our display is actually not a standard USB. It's a high-end Japanese display that also supports touch. And because we own the entire firmware, we do everything from scratch. We can actually have, let's say, 3 modes of what we call our race view technology. One is, for example, SimHub. The other one is what we have, RaceHub, our software. Then you can pick and choose our screens. But we also have a hybrid mode. So imagine you have a great layout from SimHub, but you would also like our cool animations that, for example, when the cars go into traction control or something like that, then you can mix and match. So you can have the SimHub, but you can also have our software
On
play
top,
along.
kind of.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. That's amazing. I mean, it's great to see that SimHub works in it as well, because so many people will have their dashboards that they use, etc.
Exactly.
So going on to the Invicta pedals, this is, I think there's a story where you and your son, you've been racing, and I think, let me know if I'm saying anything incorrectly, but you recognize there weren't a lot of pedals on the market that had that really kind of like short travel that you have in a car. You came out with the Invicta pedals, very popular at the high end. You told me a story about how Mick Hakkinen tried it and was like, I want 3 of them.
Exactly.
And racing drivers as well. But this is where I think the story for Asetek goes into the present day and beyond, because since then you've done other Invicta products, all high end. Obviously you bring in the same tolerances in motorsport. Then the Forte, which is also, I would say, actually high end.
Yeah, it is for sure.
And then the La Prima, which I wouldn't say is budget, but probably for other brands is actually more mid-range. But for you, it's more like...
Yeah, we call it entry to high end.
Entry.
Yeah.
And we've seen announcements of how you want to go even more entry. That is a very different proposition to just doing super high end. And I've been lucky enough to do quite a few interviews like this, like, for example, with Thomas Jackenmeyer, where he was stood in front of a very nice office and they were having struggles basically doing consumer service and responding. Those are all elements of a business that aren't very sexy, but you have to deal with it. That the prize is very big, but just talk us, what's your mentality there as you're kind of going into that space with La Prima and more entry level? How are you thinking of approaching it?
Yeah, so first of all, we are building a business. We cannot live out of high-end technology and bragging. We also need to sell some products. And where we believe there's currently a gap is, in the very low end of the market. Take note, I'm not saying low quality. I'm saying low cost of the market, and then up to, let's say, La Prima. I believe there is a gap there. And we would like to get this real race feel. And now you correct me if I'm wrong, but you have probably tried our Invicta, and you also tried the new and unannounced stuff that we're coming out with. And I think you've been able to feel the similarities. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to give the, let's call it average Joe, the opportunity to get the high-end feeling, but still at a very affordable price level. So that's the overall thoughts behind that.
Yeah, and also, so in all of the range, I've noticed the button placement is very similar.
Yes.
The touch and feel is similar. These are interchangeable across a lot of the projects down the range. It seems like you have a big focus on making things interoperable or swapping. Have you seen any data where people are doing that? People are starting on La Prima and they're swapping certain bits? Because I imagine there's some people who will stay in the ecosystem and swap, and there's some people who, for different reasons, will be like, I want to sell that and I want something really shiny and new. But it seems like you've gone down the path of upgradability. Have you seen kind of people doing that?
Yes, there's a, I would say, big reward and also a big ask. I think the number one question as we get is actually, when is this upgrade kit for this and that available? And then, again, this new and unannounced product that we will come up with, you start at a very low price point. And if you then have higher ambitions, you don't have to sell it. I think with our competitors, then you have to buy their next thing or the next thing and get rid of it. Here you can actually upgrade it. For example, the brake, you can go from where it is all the way up through load cell, all the way up to hydraulics. So I think that's actually super important when you spend this kind of money. And I think more people are doing it now, but I think we were some of the first to come out with this, quick release where you can buy an Asetek wheelbase, but you can use everyone else's steering wheel. For example, this Invicta steering wheel, it's what, €1,300 steering wheel. And if you already have a €1,300 steering wheel, guess what? You may not want to get rid of that. So then you can actually buy our wheelbase and use it with other vendors. And you can do the same. We also have adapters that you may own a wheelbase already, but you really like our steering wheel. Then you can buy our steering wheel and use it on the other brand of wheelbase. So that is a big thing for us for sure.
With your experience of operating in liquid coolers and working with so many big, not even brands, just big companies, are you a force for like a standard in sim racing, a standard QR, standard interoperability? You'd have to get a lot of people around the table with different incentives. But is that, I mean, I can tell you from a consumer perspective, that would be amazing to have like a standard.
I think what you ask for is impossible.
Okay.
There are not technically, but I think it's impossible because there are just too many opinions and too many people. I think on the PC side, I'm old, but I'm not that old. But if I remember correctly, it comes from IBM originally, and then it's built on from there, the x86 design. But for those of you who are into PCs, fundamentally, we are still building on this ATX design. Intel and AMD actually tried many years ago to agree on something called BTX. It never took off. So I think it's impossible. But what we are trying to do is something quite similar. First of all, we have these quick releases with third-party adapters. So, as I said, third-party wheels. But we also have a whole forest of wheel manufacturers that we actually allow to use our quick connects and sell it under or as a part of their brand and a part of their package, so that it is kind of open. But I think that's the closest we probably will be able to get. Also, there are manufacturers who only have a mechanical quick release, and then they use Bluetooth or a wire. Where ours, everything goes to the wheelbase. There are no wires, there's no Bluetooth, there's no battery. So there's also just, different technologies.
Well, every time I speak with you, I'm going to ask you the question anyway, see if there's any progress. I thought these were transistors, obviously not. They're like the rotaries. It'd be such a shame not to look at the PCB. We're here in Denmark. I've seen how a lot of the wheels are hand assembled. QC goes on before it's sent out. It's actually signed by yourself and by the person who I think has approved it. I was at another wheel manufacturer last week and I said, why don't you do that? And they didn't really get it. But I think it's great to know if you bought a $1,300 wheel that someone's actually signed off.
I can tell you the story there because one of my other big passions is hi-fi. And I bought a very expensive Japanese amplifier. And then when I opened that amplifier, there was a set of white gloves. That's actually also in the box if you buy these. And then there was a signature from the president. Thanks for buying this flagship product.
Yeah.
And it actually made me feel appreciated. And it's the same here. If people buy our flagship product, I think it's only fair that I give them my signature and say thank you.
I think that is at the moment a differentiating factor, especially as there is so much competition now for wheels and people want to know they've got that connection. But just speaking of connection, this PCB, so assembling everything in Denmark, we've seen a lot of tariffs come out from the US, there's difficulties. I saw you did a video where you said you're going to try and hold prices for as long as possible, but tariffs are going to come in. What advantages do you have about assembling things in Denmark? Does it give you an advantage, or are you still sourcing a lot of parts from China, etc.?
For the first time in history, it may be an advantage to assemble something in Denmark. And for sure, this is only for customers who are willing to pay a lot of money for a steering wheel. But for sure, we will keep shipping the Invictas because there is only 10% tariffs as we speak. And the irony here is that, like everyone else in the business, we have manufacturing in China and we also have some in Malaysia. But the irony here is you can take one of our cheapest steering wheels that are made in China. When it hits US ground, it would end up being more expensive than the Invicta wheel.
Yeah.
So in that case, as a customer, you would be better off buying the Invicta.
You must have a smile on your face when you saw that big board of tariffs a little bit.
Nah, not really, because Invicta is unfortunately not our biggest volume product.
Yeah. Let's just quickly talk about this. Is this a mold, or how is this? What's this?
No, one of the reasons the Invicta is expensive.
That's in the wheel.
Yes, in my view, the Invicta is actually not expensive. It's a lot of money, but it's actually not expensive if you consider what you get. This starts out as one big aluminum billet block, and and every wheel is then manufactured from one solid block to what you see
here. That's milled.
Everything is milled. You saw the machines out there today. Yeah. Everything.
I didn't know that actually.
So that
ain't gonna break really. That's you've got that big solid base.
Yes,
to it.
and then we anodize it, which makes it black. And then we pull it up in the milling machine again. And then we contrast mill the logo. So it's actually being put up in the milling machine twice.
I think that's another differentiating factor for Asetek, and also as you go up the price range, sometimes you get more of that on the pedals.
Yes, exactly.
Let's just talk very quickly about where you sit in the market, because you started, I think, 2020. You brought out the pedal.
Yeah, is it 3 years ago or something like that? Perhaps three. It may have been in 21 or something. Okay. I don't recall.
But there's been an explosion since, and we've seen. Let's just talk really candidly. We've seen Logitech come from mass volume entry range to doing a G Pro at 11 Newton meters. We've seen Thrustmaster coming at 5 Newton meters with a direct drive with some new technology in there. We've obviously seen a huge amount of Far Eastern companies like Moser, Simagic, Conspit. So the market's difficult from the bottom, from the side. The top is you're always going to be able to sell at the top, but it seems where you want to go is very competitive. How do you want to, in fact, I know, I don't know if you've seen our channel, but we review equipment from everywhere. We interview all the CEOs and everything. Why should people buy Asetek? I think there's a good brand reputation, but why should they buy Asetek over Simucube or Moser or whoever? What's the value there with Asetek?
That's of course a good question that we also keep asking ourselves as new competitors are turning up every day. But I think it's some of the old-fashioned deeds, actually. First of all, if you call our customer support, there's actually someone answering.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And
no AI chatbots.
We don't have any AI chatbots in this company. I'll not rule out that it will happen, but for now we don't. We have real people. And of course, we can be busy too, so answering times may not always be 5 minutes, but there are real people taking care of you. And I think if you go into the communities and look, we have a very good reputation for our customer support.
Okay.
And I fundamentally believe that you cannot have the lowest price and the best customer support.
Okay.
Those are not related typically, I would say. And that's not just a sim racing statement. I think if you pay more for a product, typically you also get better customer support and vice versa. So then it's really up to the customer from that perspective. Do I want to put any value on customer support, or
So there is a premium with Asetek that you can have the customer
yeah,
support?
of course, we are here in Europe. We have people here that we pay a salary to do customer support. So, of course, it comes at some cost. And so that's one aspect. Another aspect is I think a lot of people confuse quality with performance. So what I mean by that, you mentioned Logitech being an absolutely massive in the low end, but that's not low quality. I think Logitech's products are great quality, but the performance is perhaps not great. Again, what do you pay for? You cannot get the highest performance and the lowest price. Where we are, it's the best compromise. I think what you get from us is great value. And as you said yourself before, you can actually feel the sensation from our high-end products in the lower-end products. And that's exactly where we want to be.
Yeah, I love hearing you talk about compromise because a lot of people just don't acknowledge it. And having a range where you keep the design cues, and I was speaking with your team about, okay, what's important to keep all the way up and what can we compromise on? And I think that's very interesting. We'll try and do an explainer of that with your product. We'll finish with some quick fire questions because you've been so generous with your time. Let's say there are no compromises. What's a dream product you'd want to put out in the market? What is a dream wheel like where it can be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars? And
to be honest, the Invicta wheel, I think it's pretty spot on. With the Invicta pedals, yeah, we will have the ABS, hydraulic ABS coming. I don't know if you've seen it, but we have a rig downstairs that we built a prototype of a couple of years back that we showed at a trade show in a closed room only. That would be my dream rig. And then we don't have any motion today. But to complete our high-end range, it would be nice to do some motion one day. Now you said I could dream.
Yeah.
So, I have seen a real Formula One simulator. And trust me, there's a lot more you can simulate than we believe. So if money was not an object, doing that as realistic as possible would be sweet.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear kind of like your vision on that and what's important. I guess as a racing driver, you know what in the sim is missing from real life. And there's a journey towards getting there. And there's lots of interesting products on the way. But Andre, honestly, it's been amazing to... actually, let's just finally look at these little caps and buttons, because this is something that I've noticed has changed in sort of La Prima to Forte to Invicta, and you get a little bit extra colouring and anodizing. It seems like you place a lot of value on this, including to the extent I think you can choose when you buy the Invicta wheel what colour buttons and caps you want. Is that expensive? Is there a premium on that on your side?
Yeah,
does it annoy you a little bit, or you're like...
No, not at all. So I've been lucky enough to buy a Ferrari.
That's a big statement.
Yes, but I didn't say skilled, I said lucky. I would say it's not been because of sim racing. Okay. Let's be honest, we're not there yet. But I've been fortunate enough to be able to buy one. And a part of it is this whole customization. That when you buy a supercar, you can make it yours. And because the Invicta is our premium product, we wanted to offer that service. And I don't recall on top of my head, but there are thousands of possibilities.
Combination.
Yes. Yeah. And of course that comes with a cost. But still, if you look at that steering wheel compared to what you get, in my view, it's lower than a lot of the competition.
Okay. That's really interesting to hear. I'm really excited basically to see Asetek. There's lots of opportunity for growth, but also how do you maintain the brand more entry level and at the whole trial, and can you connect it? Can you have these hero products that people aspire and then they upgrade? How do you keep it together? It's going to be really interesting. So thank you so much for your time, Andre. It's been incredible.
You too.
Any questions, they'll be in the comments and we'll put them to you because people will be asking more questions, I'm sure.
I'm ready.
And excited to see more.